So let's talk about regret. Um, so it, it's looking into your past, your decisions or lack of decisions, or reflexive um, responses to conditions and circumstances and people and so forth. And looking back, you would have preferred to have taken a different path at that juncture. Right? We can presume that the reason that we look back and think, if I had gone left instead of right, I would prefer that. We can presume that's because you've grown, right? So you see more options. You're familiar. You have more wisdom. Sometimes when we look back regretfully, um, I'm simplifying, but we had a fork in the road and we went left, and there was suffering, there was pain, there was harm, there was imperfection. And now, sometime later, maybe decades later, who knows, maybe the next morning, but I look back and I think, well, there was suffering, there was pain when I went left. I wish I had gone right. Right might have been just as much pain, might have been more pain, might have been less, might have been same amount of pain, but for different people, or different things were injured by that choice. But we presume as we grow, we are more wise, we're more informed, we have more experience. And so when we look back and we think, I know I had these two choices, I made this one, had I made this one, odds are this is actually a healthier, wiser choice. So I think that's fair in many cases to presume that when we look back and we think a different decision would have been better, we're probably more likely right than not. So here I am, I have regret, but I don't have a time machine. And I think that if I was in that situation again, magically, I would make a different choice. But at the time of the choice, you didn't know. Perhaps, I mean, you might have, but generally speaking, you might not have known how much pain and suffering the choice would make. Because your experience is different, your wisdom is different, your point of view is different, and you haven't traveled either of those two paths. When I look back, I only know the painful one because I trod it. At the time, I might not have known. Because of my experience, because of my perspective, and because of my lack of walking that path. Yeah. So, in short, it's nice to give yourself a little grace and say, all right, this future me, which I call my present me, can clearly see that's a regretful choice. Any idiot would have gone the other way, and of course I went this painful way. Yes, that is a fair view from this perspective today. Yeah. But the person that made the choice is not me, it was younger me, right? And so, more likely than not, the choice that was made at the time was the best choice you were capable of making, given your perspective, education, worldly wisdom, experience, etc. And we want to remember that, right? If we look back historically, like in history, not about ourselves, and we think, boy, when I think back on, 400 years ago, such and such a person, they should have just made friends with those people on the island they landed on instead of conquered them. Like, obviously, why would you just go in there and conquer them? You could just become trading partners and friends. That's your perspective now. If you were actually 300 years ago, You would have grown up with an education, with a mindset, with a worldview, with a language, with a culture, with a custom that says, hey, here's what we do. We go take over this. It would have made all the sense in the world at the time, because the set of conditions that you grew up in help support your view of the world. When we look back, it's hard to see that. It's like, oh, it makes sense. Why don't you just be friends? Why would you conquer everybody? Of course, it's the most, I would definitely do it differently. And what you're saying is, out of the 2 billion people alive on Earth, I would have been different if I lived then. That's not actually very likely. Right. It's just really saying that it's so easy to be caught up in your point of view, given where you are in the world, that you can't see it another way. But that's the same thing that happened to you 12 years ago when you did the thing you now regret. You were so caught up in really this frozen possibility of just seeing the world through this lens, the lens given to you by your culture, acclimation, experience, wisdom, point of view, place on the path, and all the rest. Okay, so here I have regret. 2 basic things I think to consider. One is the internal reference to the regret, and then there's the external reference to the regret. So the external reference to the regret is, let's say, for example, who I harmed. It could be an institution, it could be a family, it could be a person, it could be somebody's fear that I gave them, or insult that I gave them, or dismissal that I gave them, whatever it might be. And then there's the internal regret, right? The I wish that I had done something else. Well, in terms of the internal regret, I have this sense of there was better decisions I could have made. I could have not done that. I could have done that. I could have done that sooner. I could have done that differently, all the rest. So, generally speaking, this is just a machination of the mind in service of making you feel less than, unworthy, dim-witted, unempathetic, pathetic, etc. If this machination in oneself does not serve to engender improved decisions in the future, i.e., if you don't learn from them, they're just putting yourself into a torture device for no benefit, right? If you're going through these kind of regretful machinations and you're like, all right, it's very clear to me now, this is a better way to behave. Let me just apologize first, or whatever. Let me not keep smoking, or whatever it might be. Let me get on the exercise bike instead of sit on the couch. Like, if the regretful machination leads to a re-examination, a recommitment, a growth, like an education, then it can be helpful. But that regretful machination has to have an output. If it's just doing this sort of permanently, it's just tearing you up. It's spinning you out. It's throwing you against the walls of whatever the spinning machine I invented is. It's not just like, okay, there's a little tumult, there's a little difficulty, and then we spit out, I have an improved understanding, I have a better plan, I have a better strategy. Better, not perfect, right? In other words, to what effect do I have this regretful machination internally? If it's to an improved effect, self, other, family, world, household, neighborhood, great. Secondly, we have the external effect. So I'm looking back on something I regret, that I was unkind to my coworker, whatever. or I kept parking on my neighbor's lawn and I never once thought to ask if it was okay or apologize for getting in their way on weekends, or whatever it might have been. So that's something I might be able to address with them, right? So it's simple to think that what you do is you go and you provide a sincere apology. Like, you really mean it, you say your apology, maybe you bring a gift or something, and that all makes sense. Our culture tells us if you really apologize sincerely and you give a gift and you really mean it, that's the best you can do. And that's fine, but I don't think that that's enough. If I'm having a regret about the harm that I caused you, what I want to do is provide you an opportunity to tell your story. In other words, hey, do you mind having a conversation? Or I'd like to have a few minutes with you, assuming they're up for it, right? They're not just like, I told you I never want to talk to you. Then the question is, hey, I think I did something wrong here. Can you tell me how that affected you? Or do you want to tell me how that felt to you? Or what you thought I did or why? Somewhere in there, you're likely to be able to weave in your apology, right? So when we seek to deliver the apology to the other, because we've learned you're supposed to do that, and it seems sensible, it's actually this inner directed regret remediation, because I want to say my apology so that I feel better, that I'm honest, and that I. It's not really about them. So assuming they're open to like receiving you, and you're not just throwing it at them, like springing it on them. Like, hey, I feel like I screwed up here. Maybe for years I screwed up, and now I'm realizing I think it was a screw up. Do you think it was a screw up? What did you think about that? Or are you still mad at me? Did that? Do you have anything you want to share? What's your story? And maybe they didn't even notice. Maybe there's a deep-seated, now I don't like anybody that looks like you. Who knows? But I want to allow them to share their story. And then if it's natural, like, provide your apology or your offer to make right. Right? So in a sense, this is a version of a time machine, right? It's a way to go back. If that person isn't alive, right, or maybe around, there's not a way, then you don't get to have this conversation, right? So you can't really get their story. But maybe there's a way to read what they wrote or talk to their friends to get a version of the story. And maybe there's a way to offer an apology to their spouse, their friends, their child, perhaps, right? And let's say you can't do that, that's just not viable or possible or reasonable, then that's imperfect, like much of life, like much of the world. But how do I bend that into a wisdom, into a learning, into a lesson, into a educational output for future interactions? And that's the best I can do, right? And I have to know, because I don't think I'm like an evil, what do you call it? Like anti-person. What's the word I want? Like sociopathic or something. Right. I gotta presume that all of my decisions, I'm not making them to be cruel and evil and hurt people and be sociopathic. From my point of view at the time, I was making a reasonable decision. And it might be because I was super stressed and depressed and in pain and impulsive and focused on my work, not on the people. And I understand why I did those. Wishing I hadn't is a way of saying, I wish I didn't have this chance to learn, right? The other person may wish I hadn't. And if I have an opportunity to, or if I can make an opportunity to attend to the external regret remediation, I think these are the two sides of the coin, like the internal and the external. And we often just focus on the internal, like, I want to feel better, right?
Yeah.
What you'll see happen, and I watch this all the time, somebody will get in a car accident, right? They're drinking and they hit, and somebody dies in the other car accident, right? And the police come and the ambulance comes, and they're getting arrested and stuff, and they're just saying, but I have work tomorrow, but this means I'm not going to get to college. I'm supposed to go to Florida next week. I'm not going to go. I. And it's like, she's dead. Like, why are you I? And to a person, you've done this thing, you shot somebody, whatever. The thing is, you hit them with your car, whatever. And we're assuming here it's negligent, like nobody's like trying to go hurt somebody. And their first response is like, right? And what we see is people are out in the yard playing volleyball at the picnic. So there's 30 people at the picnic, and somebody takes a really tough fall, right? Like, you can be sure that the people that are paying attention are all going to say, are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my God, are you okay? And really what they're saying is, am I okay? If there's like a nurse there, maybe they're going over this saying, are you okay? And they actually mean, do you have feeling in your fingers? Is your bone in place? Did you lose consciousness? Are your pupils dilated? Okay. But most of us are saying, are you okay? So what we're saying is, can I go back to my picnic? This looks like the picnic might be over and there's going to be an ambulance and a lawsuit or whatever. This looks like I'm going to have to stop telling jokes and having a beer because something serious has happened. So what I'm hoping is that somebody will say, it's okay, she just needs an ice pack. This happens sometimes. He's very clumsy. He's going to take a seat for a minute. Oh, he was drinking. That's why he fell. Nobody did anything wrong. And everybody wants to know if you're okay. But they don't really want to know if you're okay. They want to know if this is going to change this, right? And so it looks like when I go to apologize to you that I care about you. But really, I care about the effect of this regret. So the caution is to make sure that the external regret remediation is actually about them. And I think most of that has to do with give them a chance to share their experience. Don't just presume it was whatever it was. Don't just jump to your relief. Don't just jump to the promised relief of your apology.
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Follow up? Or are you good?